Nailing your white balance on a controlled shoot is easy. You match the camera to the key light and you're good to go. But what about at a fast-paced wedding with 15 different shooting scenarios? The bride needed the dress on 45 minutes ago, the first look is under a giant green tree over there, and the ceremony has 5 different colored lights pointing at the altar. Then when you get home, you have to color correct every shot. It's enough to drive you crazy. But imagine there was a way to nail your white balance for every shot and you never had to color correct again. It's actually pretty simple. So today I'm going to show you 3 easy tools that will help you nail your white balance at a wedding. So one of the reasons that it's very important to have accurate white balance is that we are mostly all working with color-baked media. What that means is we're not shooting in RAW where we can actually adjust the white balance in post. Any sort of drastic adjustments that you have to make in post will actually come at the expense of dynamic range, color fidelity. So you need to think of your white balance as really your first step in color grading. But another reason is for sake of editing speed, it can be much faster when all of your footage just comes in and it looks perfect. And so with the film poets, we almost never have to color correct any footage. We do color grade, but for color correction, everything comes in almost perfect. In fact, we had an editor not too long ago send me a message saying that it came in perfect. Now, what are the options for white balance? Let's talk about that. The first and easiest option is to just go for auto white balance. Most of us know why that's a bad idea, but just to explain, auto white balance is letting the camera decide for you, similar to auto exposure, but in the sense that white balance can actually drift. And now there actually is no way to correct it in post because it is moving on you. It's a moving target. This is something that I suggest to stay away from unless it's an emergency and you don't have time to think about it and this is just a last minute thing. You need to flick to auto white balance. But other than that, it's generally a bad idea. The other more common option for live events is balancing by eye. And this is where you look through the back of the screen and just try to dial in the balance. You're guessing what it should be. There's several problems with that I want to talk about. The first one is that the way that your eyes and brain work together, it's sort of this accurate auto white balance all the time. Because your brain is being affected by you actually standing in the environment, it's very hard for you to accurately dial in a white balance if you're in the room that is making you see the white balance differently already. So you are not having an objective view on the back of your screen. Secondly, is that screens on the back of cameras have different white points. A white point is basically the white balance of the screen itself, which is this another variable that's in there. Some of my older Canon cameras, it's a much colder screen than my newer ones. And if I were to look at them on the back of the screen of, like, let's say my 1DC versus my 1DX2, I'm gonna white balance them completely different based on the back of the screen, although the same light is hitting the sensor and it's the same scene. Now, one of the other variables and things that happens at maybe a bride prep that's taking place at a hotel or something is that a lot of these buildings, they have this new solar tint on them that's made to keep out the heat, but it has this crazy green tint on it that you might not be able to perceive when you're standing in the room because your brain is dialing that out and it looks white in there to you. And then you get into editing and the bride has this putrid green skin tone and you never saw that with your eyes. Now the third option, and the one that we do, is to take a scientific measurement of the Kelvin temperature that's hitting our subject and we set our cameras to match. And another big advantage of this is you're now able to communicate to other shooters in the room what the white balance is. And we're able to have footage that matches, but more importantly, that's accurate in post. Because now you're not spending a lot of your time judging and looking at scopes, trying to find what the actual white balance was in the room and fixing that. You can spend more time in your editing, but you can also spend more time in your color grading, your creative grades, actually making the films look better. Something that makes a big difference and not just putting it back to where it should have been when you shot it. So there are 2 tools that we use to measure white balance on the wedding day. The first is this ExpoDisc right here. This is essentially just a gray card that you place over your lens, but you can go into the custom white balance mode and you want to always aim this at the light that's hitting your subject. So you don't face the bride and aim, you will go over to the bride. You point this back at maybe the window light coming in, make sure it's exposed right in the middle, and click a picture. On a Canon camera, you have to select custom white balance. It will set you a perfect white balance, but it doesn't tell you what it is. It's very frustrating. On a Sony, it will set it for you and also tell you what the color temperature is and if there's any sort of green or magenta shifts. I'm not sure on Panasonic. how this works. But I don't use this often because it actually takes more time and is a little bit, it's just a little bit clunkier because you're taking your camera off. You know, if you're using a monopod, you might have to take it off and you're putting this big thing up next to people's face sometimes. What I find to be much better is using the Cine Meter II app and a Luxi light dome. And this is just a little light dome that you stick over the camera and it just pops off. You can stick it into your shoot sack, your camera bag. It's very easy to just slide on during the day, check your color temperature. In fact, let me try that right here. Oh look, we're 5,600 Kelvin. But it does need to be calibrated and we're gonna talk about how to do that in a second. Another reason why this is great is because you are now learning what color temperature is. You are not just using your eye and guessing. And so the more you use this, the better you get at knowing what the actual color temperature is. And it will make you even better when you have to shoot and color balance by eye, because there's no time. You're gonna have a better image anyway. Now I know what you might be thinking, Matt, I don't have time to check white balance during the day. I'm barely getting the shots that I need. Why are you suggesting that I do something different? And so let me explain a little bit about how you could go about doing this and not miss any shots, because you never want to miss shots. That's one of the most important things, right? So the idea is we want to get away from being a reactive wedding filmmaker. The idea is to be a proactive filmmaker, to know, okay, this is the light that the makeup's going to be in. Let's measure the color temperature here. It's very easy and very quick, and you can actually do this before it's time to even take a shot. The other thing is some people might be worried about like, oh, I don't know if I want to bust this tool out or whatever. For some reason, using this with the app on here, brides are really impressed with it. They're like, ooh, what's that? What's going on? I'm like, I just say, oh, this makes the colors perfect for you. And it always kind of just gets a nice little, like, oh, cool. And, you know, light meters are kind of common at weddings now because so many higher end photographers are shooting film. They're using them as well. Really, when you see a light meter, it means consistency. All right, so here's some raw footage just showing different ways to white balance. So right here, I've got auto white balance on. If we take a look right over here compared to the rest of our waveform, it's definitely a bit cold. So for the next shot, I try to balance by eye. You can see it's looking better. I've definitely got the Kelvin temperature in, but there is a green cast. That her skin tone just does not look healthy right here. And then now to get perfect white balance, we're gonna measure the Kelvin temp and the green tint. And you can see in this next shot here, we have the green tint dialed out and her skin is looking much, much better. Okay, so let's take a look at just a quick portrait session with a couple. So we've got a couple shots right here. We're in some nice light. Okay, let's stop right here. So what I want you to notice, we have the sun hitting, backlighting the couple right in here. All right, we got this nice little hair light going on with them. All right, but the main light, the key light that's lighting their faces is the blue sky that is all up way above them over here, right? It's on the opposite side of the sun. And that sky is its own color temperature, separate from the sun. So there's two ways to set up your meter for this. You can have it where none of the sun hits your meter and you just point it this way. And so that, let's say this is your light meter, all of the light hitting is coming from this direction. And nothing from the sun is hitting it. So for here, you're gonna have to choose, do you want to measure only the light that's hitting their skin and then let this rim light from the sun do its thing? Or do you want to try to neutralize that at the expense of cooling off their skin a bit? I like to always prioritize skin tones and then let a rim light do what it's gonna do on its own. I think that looks most natural, and this is really what I've done here. And I think we ended up, we're probably at 8,500 or 9,000 Kelvin right here, and it's still not too warm at all. All right, so here's some behind the scenes footage from another scenario. We just finished up shooting a reception, but now the couple is gonna exit and they're gonna walk this way down this path, right? Well, they're doing a exit where they're tossing rice or something like that. So we're gonna need to light their faces, but we have a pretty heavy light behind them right up here. Okay, so we're gonna set up, we're gonna measure the color temperature of this light, and then we're gonna match our light that's gonna hit their face to this. Okay, so you can see here we have our light set up. Now, if we take a measurement of that light, we'll see that it's measuring right at 3,000 Kelvin here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna whip around, take a look at that street light that I just showed you earlier, and now we have that right at 5400 Kelvin. So pretty simple. All we're gonna do is come back around and change the color temperature of this light until it matches 5400 Kelvin. And now the color temperature of our lights will match these lights, and this is how it looks. Let's talk about one of the most difficult situations for white balancing, and that is the ceremony itself. What you're dealing with is essentially 2 or 3 settings that the bride is gonna walk through. She could have a totally different color light at the start of the altar, then at the middle, and then when she gets down to the very end for the ceremony itself, it could be totally different. So the temptation might be to just throw your hands up and be like, there's just no accurate way to do this. But I think using this Luxi on your phone is a great method, because what you can do is walk the aisle yourself while you're looking at it and see what the color temperature is doing. So what I do for Pacey is I will check the color temperature in the middle of the aisle. That's usually where the sweet spot's gonna be for her shot. And now let's say if they get up to the altar and the lights are suddenly warmer, we'll go up there before the ceremony. I'll check the white balance up there, and in that situation, we know when the ceremony starts, we need to be at this color temperature, but for the processional, we're gonna be shooting at a different color temperature. And this just takes a couple seconds of planning as we walk through, and it helps to keep the bride coming down the aisle, that shot, looking the same as it does when she gives her vows, because many times the way that you might cut a film, those shots might be back to back. So you want the colors to match as closely as possible. So let's talk about this Luxi and how to set it up. Okay, so when we first download the app, we don't have the information that we need on the screen. So we go into our settings. First thing we want to do is to disable all cameras but the front Luxi right there. And then we want to click this show camera white balance and tint. So the next thing we need to do is to calibrate the Luxi. So what you have to do is you have to use the Cine Meter II app, and you will take a known light source, and you have to know what the color temperature is. You dial in your Cine Meter II app. Now the thing is, most of us don't really have known color temperature lights. Even maybe some of the LED lights that we have that are like tungsten light, they might have a green or magenta shift to it. So you want to do something that is full spectrum and that you know. And the best thing for that is the sun. And so what you want to do is wait for about noon on a day with no clouds. You have the sun right above your head with no clouds that are going to get in the way. You can put this under there, and the color temperature should read right at 5500 Kelvin. So to calibrate the colors, just press and hold this Kelvin temperature right here until the color calibration settings pop up. Then just dial in your color correction temperature until it matches 5500 Kelvin, and you'll have accurate Kelvin temp readings throughout. Now it gets a little bit trickier when you want to calibrate for your green and magenta shift. This is one of the most useful parts of this tool. So you're gonna need to order some plus green gels. I suggest the 1/8 plus green, not this 1/2 that I have shown here. I'll have a link to it in the description. Now you put the ExpoDisc over your camera, point it back at that sun, white balance to 5500 Kelvin. You could also do this with a gray card. Now you will need to bring up your RGB monitors. If your camera doesn't have it, you can use an external display. The main thing is you just need to be able to see the red, blue, and green channels individually. And then just go over to your white balance correction and put in as much magenta as it'll let you. And now you'll notice that the green channel is reading lower than the red and the blue channel. So what we'll do is we'll lay over that green gel right over the ExpoDisc, or you do it over your lens facing the gray card. And now keep an eye on your green channel, and then we will fold that over, and we'll continue to fold that over until the green channel is even with the red and the blue channel. Now you just take the same number of times that you folded the gel over, lay it over your Luxi, go into your tint gain in the color calibration, and then just move that number up and down until the number matches the amount of magenta that you're able to dial in. So here it says 9G. That means to counteract that green tint, we're going to go 9 magenta. And that way the number is about on par with your camera. So if your camera goes to 20, you can have it say 20. When you're doing this tint gain, it doesn't really change anything but the sensitivity that that number shows. And now you're all set and calibrated. Just make sure you keep the Luxi that you use paired with your same phone. And if you ever change phones, you need to recalibrate it, or if you change Luxis, you need to recalibrate it again. I don't use any of the exposure meters, although you could. The only thing I look at is this color temperature and the green magenta tint. The Kelvin temp is the temperature that you will put into your camera. The green magenta tint, you will put the opposite in. So if it says that there is green there, you will put magenta in. If there's magenta, you can put some green in. And I think there are two circumstances where you can break the rules, ignore what the white balance measurement is, and I'll explain what those are. But beforehand, let me tell you about today's sponsor, SkillShare. SkillShare is an online learning community with thousands of classes. So when you're learning any new skill, it's important to start with the fundamentals and build from there. That's exactly what the SkillShare classes are designed to do. You can learn everything from cinematography to video editing. Right now, I'm improving my sketching to help with storyboards. I've always been really embarrassed about my storyboarding skills, and I've always been a little scared to show off my boards to anyone. So this class from Siobhan Twomey is helping a lot. SkillShare is less than $10 a month with an annual subscription, and you can use the link in the description to get a free trial of the premium membership so you can go explore and start learning. Now, there are times when measuring color temperature doesn't matter. One of them is in extreme color shifts. An example of that would be like a sparkler exit, right? So sparklers and stuff, these things can be 2200 Kelvin or less, or very warm. You don't really want to neutralize that, because what happens in real life is your brain starts to accept that, hey, this is really warm light. And that's the way when you're standing in a sparkler exit, it still looks warm. So I just leave it right at 3000 on most sparkler exits. It warms everything up and it looks like it felt when you're standing there. We aren't neutralizing that light. On the other end of the spectrum, at something, let's say like blue hour, right? Sun's just gone down, you're getting kind of twilight in the sky. That, if you measure that, you're measuring like 14,000 Kelvin or something there. And oftentimes like if this is, let's say it's an outdoor reception, the lights for the reception might be on, and then say they're 3000 Kelvin, right? So where do you white balance? Because it's tricky. So twilight time, I just like to be at 4500 Kelvin, and this lets the tungsten lights feel a little bit, warmer, but also the blue ambient in the sky goes this sort of electric blue, and it's very cool look to it. And measuring and trying to dial in like a technical, what the white balance is of the sky there is just gonna bite you in the butt. Those are the two situations at a wedding where I don't rely on the meter. I rely more on the creative side. But everything else, I like it to be technically correct, because you can get it creative as you want to in post, and you're having fun while you're doing it. But if you're fixing random white balance issues on the whole time, it's really ruining your color grading process, and it's degrading your image. And if you practice with this a bit, I think you'll find that it's pretty easy to implement as long as you think ahead. You'll get more accurate colors, save time in post, have better looking footage, and also develop a better eye, because you'll know what color temperatures look like because you've measured them. And if that helped you out, subscribe, because I got a lot more coming for you guys. Until next time, y'all have fun shooting.